this is the mosque of Bilal. Bilal was so important in the development of Islam that he's referred to as a third of the faith. He's pure African.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Pure Ethiopian. The word Ethiopia or Ethiopian comes from the Greeks. Ethiopia means land of the burnt-faced people, land of the black people, the people kissed by the sun. And they produce many, many, many outstanding people. But Bilal is one of the most outstanding. Bilal is the first muezzin. He's the first caller to prayer. He would climb into the minaret in the morning and call the faithful to prayer. He was so devout that Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, used to talk about Bilal. In fact, he recounted the story. He says he talked to Bilal one morning and told Bilal, "Bilal, last night I dreamed that I went to paradise and I found that you had been there before me." That's a very, very profound statement. If you look to Ethiopia, there you will find a land of righteousness ruled by a king under whom no man is persecuted. It is a land where God will bring you rest from all of your afflictions, and the earliest Muslims went there. And when things finally stabilized in Mecca, and those Muslims went back to Arabia, Muhammad, the prophet, was so impressed by the hospitality that they received that he said that he who brings an Ethiopian man or an Ethiopian woman into his house brings the blessings of God there. That's pretty deep stuff. So anyway, this is the mosque of Bilal. This is not on any tourist itinerary. I was in Damascus, I was in Syria, I was by myself, and I was determined to seek this out. And this is the photograph of it. So, and that's actually his tomb. He's actually buried in there. I was able to peer inside that glass and through the glass and see his tomb, see his coffin. This great black man who was referred to as a third of the faith of Islam.
Well, Mr. Nyerere, thanks a lot for everything. It's been a very nice day. Well, very nice weather, I mean. Goodbye, Madam Nyerere. I hope to see you again. And you too. I like it. I say, have you by any chance seen my wife? Most embarrassing. Most embarrassing.
Others, the co-chair for the Millions More movement here in the city of Wilmington, Delaware, our brother Christopher 1X. Let us bring him on.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Hotep, Ashe, Harambe, Hakwaba. That's some greetings from other African cultures or other African people. Brothers and sisters, I'm standing up here as the student minister of the Millions More Movement, Ministry of Information. And I'd like to say thank you for coming out tonight. I'm honored to have y'all here tonight, and we hope that everyone will be filled tonight, intellectually, spiritually, and intelligently. I'd like to bring up the chairman of the Millions More Movement, a strong black man, a good black man. And he's He's my brother.
Brothers and sisters, thank you for coming out tonight. Little rain, little mist, little cool weather, a little weak, but you made it. Dr. Runoko is much sought out for radio, television, and newspaper interviews, having now been interviewed on more than 200 radio broadcasts and more than 100 television programs. As a public lecturer, during the past 20 years, he has made major presentations at more than 125 colleges and universities, and scores of public and private schools, libraries, and bookstores, churches, and community centers. On the international circuit, he has lectured in Australia, Barbados, Belize, Bolivia, Brazil, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Egypt, England, Ethiopia, France, Fiji, Germany, Guyana, Honduras, India, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Jordan, Kenya, Martinique, Morocco, Namibia, the Netherlands, Antilles, Niger, Panama, Peru, Russia, St. Martin, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, Thailand, Trinidad, Turkey, Uganda, Venezuela, Vietnam, and Zimbabwe. Brothers and sisters, when we talk about Dr. John Henry Clark, when we talk about Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, when we talk about Dr. Ben Yakinen, we got to talk about Dr. Runoko Rashidi. So for some of you, I introduce to some rather and present to others. Let's bring on Dr. Runoko Rashidi.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters and brothers. It's going to be very informal. I would encourage you to come on up if you like. You don't have to sit in the back. We're just going to show some pictures. So I don't want y'all to be scared or nothing like that. You know, I don't have H1N1 or anything that I'm aware of. So don't be scared. I'm very pleased to be here. I want to thank our minister, all the members of Mosque number 35. Mostly I want to thank Brother Christopher and Brother Ernest for bringing me out. I had the pleasure of traveling with them through the length and breadth of the Nile Valley over the summer. So this is like a family reunion in a sense. This is, I think, the second time I've been here. The first time I did a presentation called Who is the Original Man? And this time it's going to be much more relaxed. I'm going to just focus on two areas where our people are located, and that is Asia, naturally, and also ancient America. And most of what I'm going to look at in terms of America is before Columbus. I've been saying for a while now that the greatest crime you can commit is to teach a child that their history begins with slavery. Because once you plant that seed in the minds of our people, then the rest follows suit. We have a great history, a mighty history, the greatest story that's barely been told. And tonight we're going to tell one or two chapters from that history. So having said that, let's see if we can dim some of the lights, and I'm just going to sit down. Jason is going to do all the work here, and I'm just going to narrate these images, okay? You may be familiar with, because I took this picture from, I think, the cover of a Final Call newspaper several years ago. I think I was at the United African Movement in Harlem, hosted by Brother Alton Maddox, and I picked up a Final Call, and this was what was either on the cover or inside. This is from Palestine. Now, we are all over the place. Sometimes I do a presentation called Unexpected Faces in Unexpected Places, because most of us just do not associate our people being in these distant parts of the world. So I'm an African man, I'm African-centered, so we're going to start in the part of Asia closest to Africa. And we're going to look particularly at South Asia, a little bit at East Asia. We'll take a pause for the cause, and then we'll go right to the Americas. Anyway, this one is from Palestine, and you can even see on the side Yasser Arafat. This one is from the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. All this is Asia, based on most people's geography. Asia and Africa are really continents that have never really been separated. Some of my Hebrew Israelite friends refer to this part of the world, so-called Middle East, as Northeast Africa. And you have two different kinds of black folk. You have one with naturally straight to wavy hair, and you have another one with what I call happy to be nappy hair. And this is what the first people in that part of the world look like. Now, the brother with the kind of wavy hair also looks like a lot of the sisters and brothers you would expect to find among Aboriginal Australians. This is a depiction of Ishmael. You heard of him. Ishmael is regarded as the traditional ancestor of the Arabs. Abraham, and a black woman from Egypt named Hagar. Okay. So he's the son of a black man and a black woman. This is from northern Saudi Arabia, actually close to the border with Jordan. And this photograph was provided to me by a brother named Tariq al-Mansour, Muslim brother who at the time at least worked for OPEC. This is a depiction, this is the original photograph I took in the Medina. The Medina is the old town. A lot of the Arab cities have Medinas. And it's the old walled part of the town. And this is from the Medina in Damascus, Syria. And this is from the great pre-Islamic hero of Arabia. This brother's name is Antar, or Antara. Sometimes he's called Antara the Lion. He's a dashing knight, a poet. He is the father of chivalry. He had an Ethiopian mother and an Arab father. And so when you hear about the knights of Europe and these stories about chivalry, certainly they're traced back to this brother right here, because those Europeans didn't know anything about chivalry. And this is just an artist's depiction of Antar going into battle. This would have been about 1,400 years old. And supposedly the people called the Bedou or the Bedouin still tell stories about this brother around their campfires at night. Now here we are in Turkey. I wanted to start with some Muslims, some black Muslims, so we could relate, we could get grounded. And here I am anyway, in Turkey with these sisters here. I was able to go to Turkey 3 times in 2004 and 2005. Tour guide, or the person who ran the tour company in Turkey, asked me, says, Dr. Rashidi, what are you here for? What do you want? Well, how can I help you? I said, I'm looking for black people. Do you have any? He says, no, we don't have any black people in Turkey. But just to be on the safe side and to make you happy, since I'm taking your money, I'll look. Within a day or so, he started to call me on the phone. He says, I may have been mistaken about that. We may have 1 or 2. Well, by the time I finished traveling to Turkey in a period of about 18 months, I found out there are 3.5 million people of African descent in Turkey. And guess what? They're terribly oppressed. They've been held in bondage. Situation is the same all over. What is it about us? And no matter where we find ourselves in the world, we tend to be on the bottom of the social ladder. In Asia, in Africa, even in Africa. Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Runoko, he's sometimes called, with these sisters in Turkey, in a community called Tigray, in the southwest portion of the country. We talked all day. They told me their ancestors are from the Sudan, and they had been taken from Sudan in Africa. The word Sudan means black. They had been taken from Sudan in Africa about 150 years ago, enslaved in the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, and never were able to come back to Africa. So they told me I was the first black person that they had ever met who either wasn't from Turkey or wasn't from Sudan. So I told them my ancestors had been enslaved too. So we had quite a talk, and it got to be very emotional. And it got to be a little personal. It got to be, in fact, a little bit touchy-feely. One of these sisters, who is not portrayed here, a little younger than these, they all told me their husbands were dead. And this sister came and sat next to me and started stroking my arm. And in Turkey said, "You look just like my dead husband." So I ended that interview rather quickly. Now this brother, this is a black Muslim in India. And this is where we're going to spend the bulk of the first part of the presentation. And remember, we're doing Asia and the Americas. So Asia is the first chapter. This is a black Muslim in India. His name is Malik Ambar. The word Malik means like a king. He is born in Africa. He is born in Ethiopia in 1575. His name is Shambu. He's taken into Asia. He ends up in India, and he gains his freedom. He builds a mosque. He builds a post office. He establishes a guerrilla movement, and he achieves a high level of prominence. These brothers and sisters are called CDs. Not like compact disc CDs, but SIDDIS. And these communities of black folk are scattered around India today. He is the most prominent of the black Muslims in the history of India. His name is Malik Ambar. This is another Muslim brother in India. This picture is about 400 years old. Now, these are the black folk in India today, and most of the images that I'm going to show are of these sisters and brothers right here. And these images, most of them were sent to me by black people in London, black people from India who are actually living in London today. And they're from the people that are commonly called untouchables. The word untouchable implies that the very touch of these sisters and brothers will cause pollution to other people. There are more black people in India today than any single country in the world. I would say there's about 300 million sisters and brothers in India today. And most of them live in terrible conditions. I mean, look at them. Now, they tend to have naturally straight to wavy hair. It's one of the only differences between black folk there and black folk here. We want our hair like that. A lot of us have to do a little work. Look. Some of these are just striking photographs. Again, the same basic physical features are so-called tribal people. Sometimes they're called Adivasis. This is great. Now, the sister in the middle, in particular, but all of them, is black children from the hood, from the inner city. Look at the features of the child in the end, and the one in the middle. Now, sometimes when I do this, I play a game, and the game is called Who That Is. When I show a picture, you're supposed to say who that is. Feel free to play along. Now, who that is? Now, this sister is not from India. She's an untouchable, but she's from a neighboring country called Nepal. Now, chances are, if I didn't tell you, you would know that they were from India. You might say they're from Wilmington. You might say they're from Philly, Germantown. School children. Now, this is an original photograph. I took this picture in 1999 before the government of India made it very clear, Dr. Runoko, that's a travel destination. That's how I ended up getting up to 95 countries. I'm going to Haiti next month. It'll be 96. Next year, God willing, I'm sure to break 100. Not many people will do that. The reason for that is I had started to travel to India regularly, and I began to develop a relationship with the untouchables and the tribal populations. It got to be very popular. The last time I was there, in March, April 1999, I was supposed to address a crowd of 10,000 people on the subject of the global unity of African people, including those in India. So as soon as I got off the plane in southern India, in a city called Trivandrum, I checked in my group at the hotel, and a group of men just looked out of place. They came up to me and they said, the supervisor of police would like to see you. And I said, I had no interest in seeing the supervisor of police. And they said, well, this isn't a request. Come with us. So I went to the office of the supervisor of police, and the first thing they did was they took my passport, which makes you real nervous. And they started to make a photocopy. And the guy says, what are you doing here? And I got flippant, and I said, well, I heard the beaches are very nice. And they made it very clear to me that this wasn't the time for humor. They were very serious. So they said, well, we know you're going to speak at this rally. And if you speak here, we're going to put you out of the country in 24 hours. So the rest of the time I was in India, I was followed very closely. Right after the tour, I got ready to go again. That's the kind of hard head I've got. Next year, I figured we'd do it, we'd be a bit more discreet. And I got an Indian tour company to handle it. and they were very cooperative. You know, they would call me, couldn't get enough of me. And all at once, you know, not only would they not call me, my calls weren't returned. And I finally tracked them down, and they said, we have a problem. And when people say we have a problem, it's very ominous. And I said, what is our problem? And the guy told me, so after you left the country, the police interviewed all the travel agents that worked with you. And they said now they wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. So I regularly hear reports about what's going to happen to me when I go back to India. So I figured, well, if one door closes, other doors open up. And so I started going to places I thought I would never see. I encourage you to go and see these places, see these monuments, see these people for yourself. And then nobody can take that from you. There's nothing like seeing for yourself. The expression, seeing is believing, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's very real. And I've been to places now I never thought I would be able to go. But India and the black people there are still dear in my heart. And don't they all look like folk that you've seen somewhere right now? Cornell West. She's from Bangladesh, next to India, a Muslim country. As a matter of fact, India has the second largest Muslim population itself in the world. The only country with more Muslims than India is Indonesia. She's from Calcutta, India. Now, she's from India, but she looks very much like she could be Ethiopian. Look at the nose of that brother. All from India now. And then you not only see the Africoid features, but sometimes blonde hair, bright blonde hair in some cases. And I've seen also bright red hair. Last year this time I had just completed a trip to Papua New Guinea in the South Pacific. It's too bad I don't have time to go in and show you those pictures. But I was among sisters and brothers in some cases with bright orange hair. Never seen anything like it before. The place is so remote that nobody knew where I was. If I disappeared, people would have said, what happened to Runoko Rashidi? Last I heard, he was in the South Pacific somewhere, from Cambodia. Now, if you go to Egypt, and I encourage you to go, Egypt's very important. And you don't even have to go, you go to the museums. One of the things you notice is the missing noses a lot of times. Now, I've done some research, and I find that wherever black folk are in ancient times, or when you see the statues and the monuments, the faces tend to be mutilated.
That's right.
Now, why is that? Look at this one. Now, I only showed this one for the first time a few days ago. I've never shown this photograph before. But look at that nappy hair. Look at the broad nose and the full lips from either Cambodia or Vietnam. Next. From Cambodia. 800 years ago. So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about the Asiatic black man, he was very much on point. This is on the cover of my most recent book. I do have a French language book. The actual title is 100,000 Year History of the African Presence in Asia. And this is from a temple complex in Cambodia called Angkor Thom. This is not Uncle Tom, Angkor Thom. And this is the entrance to it. And you have dozens and dozens of these faces. Now look, that has to be a brother. And the publisher of the book was so impressed with this photograph, this is what we decided to use for the cover. From Vietnam. Now these are not, remember this is 1,000 years old. This is the brother who was over there in the war against the Vietnamese. By the way, when you go to Vietnam, they don't refer to the war as the Vietnamese War. They call it the American War. People tend to look at things from their perspective. Everybody except us. We're taught to look at it from the perspective of the dominant culture. As one of my colleagues says, even in terms of God, for our enemy has become our deity. From Dover, Delaware. Delaware State University, one of the students. Actually, he's from the Philippines and from China. Now, that's just the introduction. All right, now we're going to use this as a transition to look at the African presence in the Americas. Now, what you see in the background is a stone head from Mexico. And it's about 3,000 years old. So let's just look at this now. What we're going to do, we're going to look at the first people in the Western Hemisphere. This image actually takes us back to Africa, because that's where humanity itself started. And the people that I'm with are probably the descendants of what the earliest people in the Americas look like. These are the so-called pygmies. This is in western Uganda near the border with the Congo. And here I am with people, the brother in the white shirt and the sister with the baby. They're called the king and queen of the Batwa. The word pygmy is a negative word, it's a pejorative term. Swahili, they would be called Mambuti. But the local language is Batwa. And this is what I think the first people in the Americas look like. This is probably the reminiscent of the first people on the planet Earth. This is an Aboriginal Australian woman. This is a photograph of this sister. You can't even see the whites of her eyes. Very spiritual, mystical looking image to me. And this is what I think the first people of the Americas look like. Came out of Africa based on studies of DNA and wandered into the Americas tens of thousands of years before Columbus was a twinkle in anybody's eye. And by the way, this sister's in a place called Palm Island. And Palm Island was where the most rebellious of the black people of Australia, at least in this particular part of Australia, were kept. The British came to Australia in, I believe, 1788, January 1788, and a Holocaust ensued. Almost all the sisters and brothers were slaughtered, cut in half, roasted alive. You know, white folks were the ones who introduced scalping, not Native Americans, enslaved, all of that. And those who resisted the most were put on this little island called Palm Island, and that's why I took this picture. We'll just go through these quickly, but this is what I think the first people in the Americas look like. These are black folk from Australia who migrated all over the world. Do you know that it wasn't until 1967, January 1967, that black people in Australia were considered human beings by the government? Literally, up until January 1967, black people in Australia were classified as plants and animals. Until January 1967, around the same time as the Black Power movement. And this is around the same time African countries are achieving independence. We can't isolate ourselves just to America. We have to look at the global perspective, because the Civil Rights movement and the Black Power movement coincides with African decolonization and black liberation struggles around the world. Now, these are from Australia, but I mean, if you look at them, again, they could be from anywhere, especially with that do-rag. And this brother, who looks a little bit like Christopher, I think, is actually from a place called Bougainville in Papua New Guinea, where the hair is nappy, but it has this orangish hue. I'll just call it next. And you can see it in ancient Egypt too, because the Egyptians say they came from Central Africa. They didn't appear out of nowhere. This one is at Princeton University Museum. So this is a special night. And I don't know how often they have these kinds of forums, but it's very important to have this kind of discussion, to see the pictures and to talk about it. So I applaud you all for coming out tonight. Look at this one. This is in the this is in the Natural History Museum in New York City. That's clearly a black person. Hundreds of these. But we don't get taught this in the schools. What if we were taught this in the schools? I mean, how would that affect our behavior? You think we'd be going around using the B word and the N word and stuff, shooting one another down in the streets, if we had some idea of what we've done? This is what I say. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. I'm going to repeat that. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. What you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. That's my philosophy of this. Look, next. Let's look at the list. Here you have, look at the goatee. This is 1,500 years old. And what appears to be clearly a pair of glasses from Mexico, an ancient black warrior. This is from the culture called the Maya. He is very important in Peru today. He's so devout. I actually saw the remains, his body, his tomb, in the church about 2 weeks ago. The people in the church have traditions that say he was so devout that he would levitate off the ground when he would pray. And you got to be pretty devout to do something like that. St. Martin again. This is an image of St. Martin in a black community in Ecuador. Black saint in Brazil. Now we're in the colonial period. Here's an image, though, even during from that time, of a black Christ being carried in a procession in Guatemala, a black Christ in Portobello, Panama, and said to perform miracles. And this is one I just carry around with me a lot. This is an image of, to my knowledge, the first known example of Jesus anywhere. This is called Christ in Glory, an image of Jesus emerging from his tomb after the crucifixion with 11 of his disciples. Judas, the CIA agent, is not there, but the rest of them are. And you see Jesus with a nice afro and what I call fair skin. Now, I wasn't supposed to take this picture, but I had a camera, and I was in the museum, and I waited until I didn't see anybody because I had to have it. And just as I was about to take my picture, somebody appeared out of nowhere and said, "No photography." This is the first known portrait painting in the Americas. This is from 1599 from Ecuador of 3 black governors of the province of Esmeraldas. And this is now in a museum in Madrid. Now here's an interesting one. This is a black servant and her white mistress, her milky white mistress. And she's serving her some kind of fruit. And she's got a look on her face like, damn, I don't think I put quite enough poison in this water. I didn't use quite enough. I should have put a double dose in there because, see, that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in resistance. From Peru, this is a black girl in Mexico. Today, there's probably about 2 or 3 million black people in Mexico. I don't know if they know they're black, but they're discriminated against. Mexico's a very racist country. And they carry that racism when they cross the border. From Colombia, I took that picture. From Ecuador, you can see the size of this. Some of these people live in the Andes. I'm not the tallest brother in the world, but I look like I'm a giant compared to this sister right here. And one of the things about the sister that stood out, she had a very foul mouth. That's such a curse. And the last thing I heard her say was screw George Bush, but she didn't say screw. You see, she looks like she's tough. You wouldn't want to make her your enemy. And I gather by the beads that she's a priestess. From Ecuador. All our sisters and brothers here are very impoverished in this part of the world. They look like they could be from any black community anywhere. Now, this sister I had a hard time taking a picture of. Because, when I asked her if I could take her picture, she said no. She said, I'm too black, I'm too ugly. Why would you want to take a picture of me? She thought I was making fun of her by asking her if I could take her picture. Low self-esteem. Ecuador. This brother's name is Rolando Palma. He's the toughest brother I've met so far from the Andes region. And he lives specifically in a city called El Carmen in Peru. He'll tell you everything you ever want to know about black people in Peru. And this is just the Altiplano. I took this picture in Bolivia a few years ago, driving down a lonely road, because I had the feeling that I had come to the end of the earth. From Bolivia, this is the queen of the Afro-Bolivianos, area of Bolivia. From Honduras. Now this sister is from a community called Sambo Creek. Well, white people own all the stores. From Peru, we're going to end with these few images of torture and resistance. Where there's injustice, where there's oppression, there's resistance. Zumbi is the great leader of Africans in colonial Brazil. They established what was called a quilombo. And finally, I'll end with these 2 images. This is Tutela Overture next, and this is Jean-Jacques Dessalines, one of the great patriots we have produced in the Western Hemisphere.